Hello, everybody, and you're very welcome back to I suppose, surprise news bulletin slash reaction video to what was something that we all felt was fairly inevitable over the last couple of weeks. Some would say months, and even others would say over the last year. The king is dead. Long live Ruud van Nistelrooy, it seems. Bit surprising all the same. I got a text message in this morning, early this morning, saying it's looking like Erik Ten Hag will get fired today. Um, I'm a little bit surprised that they've immediately announced that Ruud van Nistelrooy will take over as his interim successor at the club. It's just another example of having a rudderless kind of boat moving forward. Personally, I think it's for the good of the club. Erik Ten Hag has ostensibly fallen on his own sword. His substitutions have been baffling at times. I suppose one of his substitutions, his decisions in terms of picking the team, his rotations, his overall opinions about who should be playing and when and why have been baffling to fans, let alone sports journalists and people of that ilk. I've spoken to people working at Old Trafford. I've spoken to people, fans, sports journalists, and everybody seems to have said the same thing for the last couple of months at least, that they cannot understand why people who are not playing well are starting, and why people who are playing and getting starts and getting subbed on based on loyalty alone. That is no way to run any business. To reward people who are underperforming and to and ostensibly punish people who are playing well. Cases in point, and I think it's indicative of the way things have gone recently. I mean, just look at Ahmad winning Player of the Month a matter of weeks ago, and then not being able to get in the team whatsoever, and Anthony coming on ahead of Anthony. It's sad. I mean, there's lots of really positive things to look back on. I was firmly in the Erik Ten Hag camp from the get-go. I've said many times on the podcast that that I am a fan of Dutch football. I could see what he's trying to implement with his process and his philosophy, but it just didn't work. The team wasn't playing for him. And unlike some other people who will be saying, look, another manager thrown under the bus by underperforming players. Look at the players who are underperforming. Nobody wants to play badly for Man United. These are his pals. De Ligt is a pal of his, not playing well. Martinez, as much as I love him to bits, not playing well. Mazraoui arguably is playing well, but playing him out of position the way he did, and he played him in that number 10 role when you have Ahmad, the player of the month, sitting on the bench, scratching his arse going, why did I bother coming back if this is how they're going to treat me? I mean, the reality is, going forward, is we absolutely have to categorically play our strongest starting 11 every single time. Ugarte, again, relatively new to the setup, but it's fairly obvious, start in centre midfield, because that's his job. It's great to see Eriksen beginning to play well, but for me, it has to be said that we have to be making decisions which are based on form and form alone. Can you imagine a prime Ruud van Nistelrooy, not starting if he was scoring goals? Wouldn't happen. So I think it's potentially exciting. I'd love to see what Ruud does now in the next, up until Christmas anyway. I think they're, if Ineos and Jim and the backroom team have, in terms of going by current form, I'm pretty sure they've someone lined up. As a United fan yesterday, I found it an incredibly difficult watch. I think it was the hardest match I've ever had to watch, where I was looking for any distraction not to watch the football match. Um, but people are not putting the ball in the back of the net. They're not scoring. So where do you go from here? I think that ultimately the biggest mistake that Erik made was not signing a out and out striker who scores 20, 30 goals a season. There were other players out there. Ultimately, a Harry Kane type, maybe Harry Kane, maybe an Osherman, um, one of these figures that would have saved him his job. Let's be honest. At this point in time, it's been coming for a while. I admire his integrity to a degree, Erik Ten Hag. Let's be honest. I was absolutely on his side with regard to the Ronaldo situation. I believe that Ronaldo was a bit of a busted flush towards the end. Yes, he's scoring, but not scoring as part of a team unit, trying to win games as a team. So that was the right decision. I was absolutely, and I think all of us here at the podcast were, I think categorically on Erik Ten Hag's side around the Jadon Sancho issue. Jadon is obviously a wonderful footballer, you can see that. But his head has been turned, his focus is not great, and he plays computer games when he should be sleeping. So, I tend to agree with Erik Ten Hag about all of that. Erik Ten Hag is not an idiot. He tried to get him on side. He tried to get all of the players that he's had rows with on side. There are a lot. Look, he won 2 trophies. This is a wonderful thing. That FA Cup final was a ray of sunshine in an eternal winter. I don't believe Man United were playing to the best of their ability. I don't believe it's clicked for him, and I'm sure he'll argue that he didn't have enough time. But 2.5 seasons in order to get them playing like a Man City and get it like he play. Look, he's had 700 million plus budget now to get players in that he wanted. Yes. Did he have issues last season with injuries? Yes. Are there some minor injuries this season? Yes. But wasn't the point of getting the summer transfers that he wanted this season all about getting cover for each position, of which he now has? In his last press conferences, he is being incredibly not like, I wouldn't be a fan of all of the journalists out there that cover Man United, and there's no such thing as a slow news day when covering Man United. But you would have to say that he had fallen into the trap over the last 2-3 months when all his press conferences were bordering on fantasy and lies. And it does get to a point when you start to believe your own lies or spoofs that it's time to move on. His latest, and I suppose his final kind of insult in terms of the fans is over the last 2 pressers anyway, state that he has been unlucky. So look, the reality is, if Real Madrid are not winning games, it wouldn't matter who's in charge. He could be a European Cup winner and he would get sacked. If Arne Slot was having the same start, you could be sure that there would be people in Liverpool upstairs circling to see if they could find an adequate and suitable successor for Arne Slot at this stage. Arne Slot. The reality is that it hasn't worked. We all wanted it to work. There's no reason, from a lot of perspectives, why, particularly this season, why I haven't clicked. The focus hasn't been there. He took a punt on, I think, ultimately what's let him down from my perspective, and from my point of view, is that he took a punt on 2 youngish strikers at a time when he needed a 27, 28-year-old goal machine. He thought that buying the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in 2 transfer windows would work, when the reality is that they should have been backup strikers for someone who was tried and tested, that they could learn from, that they could Um, also get a rest when needed. Hasn't been helped by Rasmus having a bit of an injury and being laid off, but Xerxes, for whatever reason, hasn't quite worked so far. I'm on the fence about him. I do want him to continue to get opportunities and to see what happens next. But as far as I'm concerned, Xerxes, I don't think has been a great success. So where do we go from here in terms of successors? I don't think there is, unfortunately, a clear option in terms of who can take over. From my perspective, I think that Jose Mourinho does have some unfinished business, but whether or not they take him is another thing. But Jose has previous about coming back to clubs and trying to finish off what he started. He's also been talking a hell of a lot about Man United in the press over the last couple of months, even before the United game. I think that if he was offered the job, he would drop the contract in Fenerbahce and come running back, because from his perspective, his ego needs that job. Do United need Mourinho? I don't know. Let me know in the comments and let me know what you think. The other potential options are Xavi, who coincidentally or not, I don't know, he was photographed on social media with his daughter wearing a Man United jersey. I don't know what that means. Interpret that at your will. I don't think he's proved himself as a manager, really. But then again, he might be part of the concoction in terms of the formula that Ineos and the lads upstairs want to bring to Man United, to bring the pressing game, playing out from the back, for want of a better term, the Barcelona system to Man United. Hence the two Dutch coaches in the last 7 or 8 years. United are not totally bereft of ideas. It just hasn't clicked. From a fan's perspective, it's dreadful. I was there at the opening game of the season, and it was enjoyable, but it did feel as if one swallow doesn't make a summer. Again, it was papering over cracks. Substitutions were a bit crazy. Why on earth you wouldn't, like, Garnacho and every other team in the world would start week in, week out under all circumstances. That's just the way it is. He's a future Ballon d'Or winner. He is. When it clicks from every single week. And the only way that happens with players like him, because it's a confidence game. If Garnacho starts every week, he will win the Ballon d'Or at some point in the near future. It's obvious. He's 19 years of age. Ronaldo, the whole first season and half of second season that Ronaldo played for Man United, he was being absolutely persecuted and hounded by the fans. And look where that went. Rasmus will get better. The reality is it's just too much too soon for him. He does care. He cares more than most, hence his social media outbursts over the last couple of weeks. So how will history remember Erik Ten Hag? I think pretty fondly. I think that he would be charged with bringing about change to a degree of which we can't quite fathom just yet. But those cups that we did win, were, I wouldn't say lucky. We played very well against Man City in the FA Cup last year, but Man City were a decision away from bringing it back to 2-2, and we know what Man City can do. So lucky, no, well deserved on the day, but that game ostensibly gave him a stay of execution. And I've said this, and I said this when I was chatting to the lads on Stratford Paddock. I said it when I was chatting to the rest of our podcast hosts in the past, and they all agreed. In any other position, in any other job, up and down any country, if somebody was being interviewed for your job and you knew that there was other jobs out there, your integrity, your ego, your heart wouldn't let you continue in that position. I wouldn't. If people were being interviewed behind my back and I found out about it, it wouldn't really matter how much I was getting paid. My integrity would not let me continue in that position. So I'm mystified as to why Erik Ten Hag allowed that to happen. Do you think Fergie would have done that? No, I don't think so. So how will we remember him? The Carling Cup was, or the Carabao Cup rather, was a well-needed boost at the time. But Man United, even as a cup team, which is ostensibly what we are, should be doing that every year, week in, week out. But fundamentally, the biggest issue here with Erik Ten Hag is that he may have survived in the post if United finished in the Champions League positions. Because the reality is, Jose Mourinho, Van Gaal, Ole Solskjaer, all of these people had higher standing finishes managing Man United. That's just the reality of it. Had we have been in the Champions League again this year, he would have been given more time. The reality is, at this point in time, with Manchester United being the size of the club that it is, based on the revenue that it earns and the money that has been spent, particularly over the last 12 months, notwithstanding the money spent since Alex Ferguson left in 2013, should be finishing in the top four every season and should not be, under any circumstances, 14th in the Premier League at any point. It's baffling as to think that people are already starting to mention the word relegation in around Manchester United. That's unbelievable. But I wouldn't be surprised. Ruud van Nistelrooy. Let's talk about Ruud for a minute or two. Okay, everybody loves Ruud. And I will say that maybe Erik Ten Hag's man management has also caused him problems. Is he somebody that falls out with people for the sake of falling out with them? I don't know. I'm not in the dressing room. Does he seem like a nice bloke? By all accounts, Erik Ten Hag is a lovely bloke. But he's also, I think, a bit cold. Whereas I think Ruud van Nistelrooy is a mentor and a bit of a father figure for a lot of players. I mean, all you have to do is look at his Ronaldo-esque Euro 2016 type behaviour on the touchline behind Erik Ten Hag. He's the one shouting at the referees. He's the one pointing when the players are going on and being substituted, particularly the forwards. Ruud van Nistelrooy seems to be the one patting them on the back, patting them on the chest, giving them a hug, kicking them up the arse. This is what's required to manage players. Alex Ferguson was very similar in that regard. I think that what United need is a refresh. And when I say a refresh, I mean very consciously managing the players to the point where you're making them feel as if they're the best players in the whole world, and that being anything other than that is not acceptable to play for the club. It's a scary time of transition. It's been hard to watch at times this season, but I still think that we can possibly turn this around and get into the top four. The reality is that we need to start with our best 11 where possible for the rest of the season. I think Ruud van Nistelrooy will have maybe up until Christmas, I think. It really depends on the availability of who Ineos and the lads are trying to bring in. It's hard to tell who that is at this point in time. But there was rumours circulating from the same sources that Man United have been interviewing candidates yet again. And I'll call it here and say that I think that it might be Barcelona connected. I think that Xavi may have interviewed for the job. I think that Luis Enrique might have interviewed for the job. I think the Barcelona mentality, the tiki-taka football might be something that they're going for. I think that kind of school of excellence, Barcelona direct football is what they want. And I feel for the players. I feel for Erik Ten Hag's disciples. I feel for Martinez. I feel for De Ligt. I feel for Anthony, who invariably will be let go now in December or January. Yeah, you'd have to say. He hasn't done enough to earn his place at the club and he should go. And I'll say that categorically now. The unearned confidence in which even when he's warming up is frightening. Yes, it's a confidence game. Play well on the pitch, not in training. Apparently, he's getting it. He's getting on the bench and coming on ahead of Ahmad because he's playing well in training. I mean, use your head. If Ahmad is not playing well in training, it's because he's annoyed clearly that he's been Player of the Month for September, and people are getting a spot on the bench coming on ahead of him because they've had a couple of good training sessions. Some players, let's be honest, some players don't turn it on in training. They keep it for matches. There's been a number of United players like that over the years because they're conserving energy or whatever. The reality is, if you're in form, you should play. End of story. And it didn't happen. Johnny Evans, as much as I love him, starting Johnny Evans over a number of fit centre-backs isn't acceptable. So look, going forward, I think the way out of this is to fight. I think that we should see what we can do with Ruud up until, December, the transfer window in January. Get another striker in there. Let's hope Ruud can work absolute miracles and play people in the right positions. Start with Garnacho. Start with Ahmad. Start with Rasmus up front. Start with Bruno and Rashid behind or in and around, playing behind them in that number 10 and alternate from both. Ugarte, start with him. Start with Dalot. Start with ideally Luke Shaw when he comes back. If possible, maybe over Dalot. And have your best centre-backs, who in my opinion are Harry Maguire and Martinez when he's playing well. And for once, the goalkeeper is something that we don't even have to discuss. Onana should start every single game. Everybody else should know that they will come in and out of that team. But in order for us to be the team that we need to be, to beat the teams that we need to beat, and to get points that we need to get, we have to start with our strongest team. And I feel for players, but it's all going to come out in the future, how they feel as if their games were affected negatively because of managerial decisions. You don't rotate a back four. You just don't. You just don't rotate a winning back four or players in form at centre back. And that's why he's no longer the manager of Man United. What do you think about all of this? Let us know. In a way, I'm very sad. I really am. I wanted it to work out, but just like other relationships, it was good while it lasted. Thanks for the memories. We really do appreciate you managing our club and bringing a little bit of hope back during a very dark time. What do you think? Has the media been too hard on Erik Ten Hag? Have we? Let us know in the comments below. Get involved on our other social media platform channels. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/ the Cult of Cantona. Join that group. Get involved. You can get us on TikTok. You can get us on Instagram and our main Facebook group as well. So, are we too hard on Erik? Should he? Where's he going to go next? So subscribe on Spotify for the main podcast as well, the Cult of Cantona. So thanks a million. And if you're feeling particularly generous, go to buymeacoffee.com/Cult of Cantona and become a member. There's special giveaways and all sorts of stuff coming up in the near future for you. For those of you who are feeling extra generous, we really appreciate your time, your energy, and yeah. Scan the QR code to become a member and buy me a coffee. And when we see you at games or out and about, we'll get you coffee back or a pint or whatever. Get involved, subscribe, share, and we'll catch you very, very soon for more, I'm sure, really interesting talking points. There's never a slow news day when supporting Manchester United. Have a great, great week. Talk to you soon.